So I'm gonna do an intro, and then I don't really do anything special. I just say something like, "This is Unfuck the Poor," and who are you, and why am we interviewing you?
So my name's Ashley Smith. I go by Ash. I have known Joseph Love for God knows forever. I work in law enforcement. I don't like it. I'm a gay man. I still have my gold star, which means you've never slept with a woman.
What that I did not know that was a thing.
It is a thing, yeah. Gold star. I've lived in Baltimore, Maryland since February 22nd, 2009. I just realized today I've almost been married to my husband for almost 10 years, and we met in 2006. Uh,
Congratulations.
Yes. Yeah, saw the marriage certificate. I found it in a desk drawer when I was looking for this webcam.
So I took some of your constructive criticism on when on when do we get to men fucking men. So I guess
I mean,
so,
I have notes too, so don't
okay.
worry. I've made comments on basically every other paragraph.
Oh, good. Well, then we're going to take a fucking detour because I'm going to delete the first page of all of my notes. That's why I have the notes up right now. Look, they're gone.
Is that
So,
what that is?
yeah,
Okay.
that's what that is. So, but you brought up a good point because this episode is mostly about body dysmorphia disorder in the gay community, and this is an interesting episode because I've never just taken a request and done it. So that was you. You did the idea of the topic, and so I covered it. And I think I went off on the wrong tangent because I first started talking like about 30,000 years ago, um, fertility sculptures and shit like that. But we're not going to do that. So getting back to men fucking men, and
No. I would say your first paragraph kind of, lack of a better phrase, hit the nail in the coffin because you're saying that a pleasant looking external appearance means you're healthy. So people do things to themselves to have that better external appearance to make themselves look better and healthy and wanted.
all right. So I'll just Control Z that. I'll just undo my delete.
Undo. Thank you for knowing that shortcut. Not many people do.
But I am actually going to switch because that was the Venus of Willendorf is 30,000 years old, and I googled it right after you mentioned this. The oldest known phallic artifact is actually 42,000 years old, and this is it. If you can see it on my screen, it doesn't look like much. Um, it doesn't really look like a penis, but I thought it was important since we're talking about male bodies. I wanted to see exactly how far back men or humans have been depicting the male anatomy.
Was there anything else on like cave drawings? I have no idea.
I didn't see it, but this I really only looked for like the earliest known depiction of the male anatomy, and this is it. And they think it was a necklace or something to be worn. It also appears to have been like handed down, well worn, that sort of thing. But I do think this is important to even look at the Venus of Willendorf, which this is one of those things I didn't know existed until I started doing this. It's about 4 inches tall, carved out of limestone. It depicts it's the figure of an exaggerated female form, large breasts, wide hips, a protruding belly. And historians don't really know if this was the ideal form for women. It would be difficult to get enough food 30,000 years ago to reach the proportions indicated on the sculpture. And kind of like how Western historians do, their initial response was this is some kind of fertility goddess or religious artifact, but there's a much more modern and interesting interpretation of it, and that is that perhaps ancient people used this sculpture as sort of a reference for what does the healthy pregnant female body look like. This would be more like early obstetrics tool, like this is what to expect when you're expecting, and this is what the body looks like, which we don't know, but it is interesting that some of our earliest known human artifacts have to do with the body itself and reproduction. So I'm not going to go into all that detail about ancient history. We're kind of going to skip forward to, I think, what most people would consider the most well documented time period in history where the human body is getting a whole bunch of attention and focus. And that would be the ancient Greeks, who were super fucking weird. They were fixated on the male form more so than the female form. And the ideal body type for women is what we would call soft. They have rounded buttocks, long wavy hair, a round gentle face. Aphrodite notably had large round breasts and a pear-shaped body. But their gods, the gods themselves were fucking jacked. I think we've seen enough Greek gods that we don't need to harp on this, but there is an interesting description of the ideal human form from Aristophanes, who, when contemplating the perfect male body, says, quote, a gleaming chest, bright skin, broad shoulders, tiny tongue, strong buttocks, and a little prick as key features. Tiny little Greek dicks represented self-control and good morals. Big dicks meant you were stupid. And this, as a stereotype, still kind of persisted into the 20th century. Like, if you recall Meat from Revenge of the Nerds, he had a huge dick and he was an idiot. But the Greeks loved going to the gymnasium. And that's a word that literally translates to naked or nude, and that's how the men worked out. And to get that bright skin that Aristophanes described, Greek men would spend hours a day at the gym or bath, scraping away sweat with strigils and rubbing their bodies in oil and wrestling. Moving on to the Italian Renaissance, we see a heavy... What?
Well, we still do.
How so?
At the gym?
You mean you scrape sweat off of your body with metal sticks?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, no, I'm kidding. Go on.
It. I thought this was one of those secrets you were going to let me in on.
There are so many secrets. I'll see what I divulge for the next hour.
So gymnasium, gym culture. I mean, what is gym culture like now?
For me, I never really started working out in the gym until probably like 2015, 2016. I've always been more of just running, swimming, biking. And I figured, we'll get into this later, I was like, I want to be a bit bigger. I've always been this skinny frame. I weigh 158, and I think at high school I weighed 145. And in high school and college, I was swimming 6 hours a day. Like, I physically could not keep the weight on. There was just no way. But for me, the time of the gym is get there, be an hour and a half, don't talk to anybody, and get done. And most of the gyms I've been to that are not considered gay or queer, most of the guys do that. But gym culture in the gay gyms, it's all about being seen, who you are, what you're doing in the steam room, and then leaving.
For me, it's the same. I show up, I don't talk to anybody, I do my thing, and I leave. But I only belong to one gym, and really, for me, it's approaching 40, and I'm afraid of like running out of breath when going up and down the stairs. So I try to do more cardio, and also I really don't want to have like a spare tire. So that's really my only motivating goal, to go to the gym. And probably the same with the Greeks. They really love being naked. So moving on from the Greeks, the Italian Renaissance, we see a heavy focus on the perfect male ideal. Da Vinci was somewhat obsessed with the human body, performing dissections on human corpses at the Hospital of Santa Maria Nuova in Florence, and compiling hundreds of pages of drawings and writings on the subject of anatomy. Michelangelo's David, as well as the Sistine Chapel ceiling, are perhaps the best examples we have of the Italian ideal of the male body. If you look at the God-giving creation to Adam, or God's creation of Adam, you can see they're all jacked. They're the perfect human form. David, Adam, God, they're all true beefcakes. And if you look at God's forearms, they're massive in this painting. Like, he's been doing hammer curls. In Europe, beauty standards were more or less set by royalty. The Elizabethan era found pale women with bright eyes and red lips, like Queen Elizabeth, attractive. Men, this is interesting. I knew this before, but it was interesting to go back and read about it. Men did focus on musculature, but not upper body, because that implied physical labor. Instead, Elizabethan men worked out their lower bodies and had particularly strong thighs and calves.
Did you look into examples? Because the few examples I can just recall in my mind from museums and just textbooks, most of the men are wearing like full on, just huge outfits where you couldn't see their body, but you would be able to see their legs, typically in tights, and they seemed really thin and narrow.
Well, I think that's important. Yeah, that they are wearing these sort of they're wearing outfits that really accentuate or highlight or show off their legs. And so,
okay. So it makes sense.
I think this idea, I think this idea of them having these really buff legs, that might be kind of a misconception. I think the idea in general is that they're showing off their legs rather than their upper body,
Okay.
which makes sense to me because, I mean, I don't know anything about gym culture in the Elizabethan era, but I can't imagine it was particularly advanced. I don't know.
Joseph here. I feel like I need to go back just a little bit about the Elizabethan era and men's legs. In 1565, Richard Walwyn was imprisoned for wearing a very monstrous and outrageous great pair of hose. In other words, hose for his legs. It is likely that he had been padding his calves to emulate the style of the Elizabethan nobility, who favored shapely legs in men. As Walwyn was a servant, sumptuary laws would not allow him to stuff his stockings with more than 1.75 yards of material, meaning he had most likely overstuffed his hose to give his legs the appearance of a nobleman. Shapely legs.
But I think we get the idea. That's enough history. History. Beauty standards have changed, but the human body doesn't really change. The human body is the human body. Bodies can look all types of ways, and depending on when you're born, you may wind up lucky enough to have a naturally occurring fashionable body, or you may not. One thing is for certain, humans like to fuck, and even if your body doesn't match the ideal of your time, you can still get laid. And that is, after all, the entire reason we focus on looks in general. It is one of the first things we notice about potential partners. For some, looks aren't everything. They may be secondary or even tertiary. For others, looks may be the only thing. That's a red flag for me, but one thing is true. Humans internalize their own body image no matter where or when they live. And this is not a first world problem. The problem is that it is underreported in third world and developing countries. And there is a sharp distinction between what the human body can look like and what it should look like. And for millennia, humans have compared their bodies to others to see how they fit into the ideal. So comparing bodies strikes me as an evolutionary feature, like our lizard brains need that information to determine if we fit in with our people. Like if we look the same, we're more closely connected. And I think that means we're part of a community, that we are accepted and whole as human people. But the belief that bodies must look a certain way and that we're all responsible for attaining some ideal form, that has to be manufactured. And that's not a feature of the normal human experience. I think it's an exploit. That is, I think the language and imagery we take in today is meant to take advantage of the more natural inclination to fit in with others, to be part of a community as a whole. And that is a very fine line, but it's one that advertising understands can be blurred. And the story of body dysmorphia, I think, really begins with advertising. Do you know much about the history of hygiene?
From what you wrote, I did not know, based on what you wrote, that America was kind of like the driving force in modern times of what it means to be clean and healthy. But the stupid shit that have come out for the past couple of years, that people have done some research on TikTok saying that the Nordic people were more healthy and clean than a lot of the British people. And that this is something that someone said on TikTok, that so many women were being more attracted to the Nordic people because they were clean, they were healthy, they used soap, they bathed once a week, rather than the crazy Christians of London, England, who didn't really bathe, so they ended up killing a lot of the women because of it. I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense, but not really. So no, I don't know much about hygiene and human evolution.
Humans have had a really strange relationship with hygiene. For like the medieval period in Europe, the idea was that you needed a layer of dirt on your skin to protect from bad stuff. Yeah. So like when you had the plague, the bubonic plague going around, people weren't bathing because they thought that keeping all your pores closed kept out. They didn't know exactly what the plague was. They just thought it kept out whatever bad humors or, for lack of a better word, bacteria from entering their body. And so for a long time, you see people not cleaning themselves and taking pride in how long they go without a bath. Like,
do you know if that was? Did they have any like anecdotal evidence that this was possible? Because this is a terrible example, but I grow my own food, and when you harvest potatoes, which grow in the dirt, you're supposed to keep them dirty, and you're supposed to keep them as dirty as long as possible because that helps keep the internal sites clean and bacterial free. That dirt is like a layer of protection from the outside elements. And I'm wondering if people thought the same way, because if you had a blemish on a sweet potato, it would get infected immediately because that layer of protection wasn't there.
That's interesting because, you know, in Europe they also do the thing with the eggs. They don't clean their eggs after they're laid, and it's because they last longer. And the answer is I don't know if that played a role in that. All I know is that period, the medieval period there, marks sort of this change, because prior to that, it was actually more common for people to go to public bathhouses, take regular baths. The soap was not really a thing. I mentioned this in my notes. Soap was more like a harsh detergent used for cleaning laundry, and so you wouldn't use it on your body. But like with the Greeks, you know, they would go to the gym, work out, they would sweat, they would coat themselves with oil, and they didn't use soap either. They would use those strigils to scrape the sweat off, and then they would put a layer of oil on. But the idea there was that they're doing this every day, and that oil is like a protective coat, and the sweat needs to be removed from the body to keep it clean. But the European style of cleanliness or hygiene gets really bizarre, and into the 1800s, you've got people basically just like patting their face with water and like dipping their hands in water, and that was the extent of hygiene. And in America, in the United States, we had running water earlier because of, I went into the notes, but yeah, it took a long time actually for Europeans to sort of get on the same level as Americans as far as hygiene goes. And today, I mean, there's no difference. I mean, there's a different, I think in Germany, and you might know, you go to Germany more often than I do. They have an interesting relationship with deodorant in general.
In Germany?
Yeah.
What did you read?
Oh no, when I was there, they almost treated deodorant more like almost like a cologne or something. A lot of people use the spray-on deodorants instead of like the solid bars of deodorant. It seemed more like an accessory than a hygiene need.
When were you there?
2009.
So I go to Germany for other reasons, and usually at these events that I attend, gay men don't usually wear deodorant.
That is an interesting relationship with deodorant.
Yes, and these events are international, and even there are certain moments where people are like, no scents, no cologne, no deodorant, you're not allowed into this bar.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
Because it overpowers the scent of a natural man.
Go on.
Are you sure?
Yes.
I haven't worn deodorant. I mean, we've had this conversation in like 6 years. I still bathe every day. But this is a different topic, Joseph.
I go everywhere.
I'm trying to like find that part where it would be are you shaking your head?
You don't have to. You just dive right in. I don't care.
When I moved to Baltimore in 2009, the economy had collapsed. I had nothing to do. I volunteered my time. I did community cleanups, but in that process, I learned how to cook. And learning how to cook, you have to really hone in on your taste buds and your sense of smell. And because of that, my sense of smell has become very strong, and so many things really bother me. That's why also I don't wear a lot of cologne or deodorant, because the scent is so strong. It actually bothers me. Going into a club, a sex club, for example, and there is that one person that does the Irish bath or the hooker shower where they're just coating themselves in so much Aqua de Jo or Calvin Klein, CK1. It smells awful, and it ruins the vibe. And the vibe of a lot of these bars is just terrible metaphor, terrible idea is it's not trashy, but just manly smell. And a lot of the smell is deodorant, sweat, a little bit of piss, a little bit of spit. people go out in gear, which could be leather or rubber or even sports gear, and that has a little bit of dried on perspiration, which has a very unique smell. And most of these bars that I go to, you are there to socialize, have drinks, but you're mostly there to have sex. So as part of the numerous rules that they allow you or that you must follow to enter these bar, usually no scents, no colognes, no deodorant is rule number 7.
Rule number. Okay, I want to ask you this. So as far as the smell goes of the bars, this is an atmospheric.
That's a good way to put it. Yes.
Yeah.
It would ruin the atmosphere.
There you go. Let me ask you about that. Does the smell, does that add or heighten the experience?
The deodorant smell or the smell of other men?
The smell of other men.
Oh, of course. Yes, it does. I mean, pheromones are a thing.
That is so interesting. And I don't know why I never would have put that together, but I wouldn't have.
Yeah. I've been to some pretty seedy places, and that scent is very unique.
Have you ever, is it the same thing? Like, have you ever smelled someone that most people's body odor doesn't offend me? But I've met a couple of people who just, I cannot stand to be around. Is this a thing?
So that could be a number of things. I find that people that are potentially offensive, they don't wash their clothes. And the clothes retain that scent more than the body itself.
Interesting. I sweat a lot, and I find that even like a few minutes after a shower, even if I'm not wearing a shirt or anything, I just start to smell bad.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
Interesting.
Thanks. I first became aware of my body odor in 6th grade, I think.
I don't recall, honestly.
Well, I remember because it was Case and Lane, and It was recess, and I had been out playing, and I like caught a whiff of something, and I kind of like stuck my nose in my shirt, and I was like, oh God. And then I like ran up and sat in the shade, and like really, I sat there and just panicked, like, please stop sweating, please stop sweating. And then,
wow.
Yeah. And then, hold on, it gets better. Then I went to the bathroom, and I began to rub soap in my armpits, like, oh God, gotta make it go away. And then I remember I used those brown paper towels, and they were really scratchy, and then I was just uncomfortable the rest of the day. I'm very self-conscious about basically
hello
everything.
Trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that sucks.
Thanks. I do remember, oh God, who was it? It's like
I mean, I do not recall any one of my friends over the years of our lives having a very distinct smell or something that was offensive, including yourself.
Thanks. That doesn't erase the years of
I know.
Cold sweats that I wake up in, afraid that I have no friends. I remember it was Carrie or Stephanie, because I remember I put my hand.
Oh my God, Stephanie! Holy shit!
Does she even exist anymore?
I don't know. I think her father embezzled all that money and then they disappeared.
That makes a lot of sense because, wow, yeah, they had money. I think she did. I think she called me out because I was like so paranoid about it. I kept sticking my hand in my armpit and smelling it, and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, I don't know.
It's okay. She doesn't exist anymore.
Great embezzlement.
Are these how all your podcasts go? Oh, that could be a yes or no face. And I wasn't sure if like we should stay on topic or just keep talking like we do.
Nope, just like I said, it looks like a script. It's really just like a guide.
Okay. All right.
So we'll go back to hygiene. Hygiene was different in the early 1900s. We already talked about it a little bit. America's always been ahead of Europe in terms of hygiene. One of the advantages of building a country from the ground up means that infrastructure is relatively easy to install, opposed to the existing cities and towns in Europe that had to be retrofitted with running water. In Europe, indoor plumbing didn't really become widespread until the turn of the 20th century, and even then, the second half of the 20th century. But in the United States, the Tremont Hotel in Boston was built with 8 water closets in 1829, and in 1833, Andrew Jackson had iron pipes installed in the White House basement to serve a bathing room in the East Wing. Americans became the global outlier in terms of bathing and running water. Americans had more access to running water and working sewers than the rest of the world, but bathing habits were mostly limited to regular cold baths, and soap wasn't used regularly. Soap was mostly used for cleaning laundry. And because Americans were more accustomed to bathing and regular hygiene, it shouldn't be a surprise that pharmaceutical and soap companies saw the bathroom as a potential market. Now, in Europe, bathing was seen as something of an eccentricity. While the popularity of public baths throughout Europe waxed and waned through the centuries, in the 19th century, the most popular form of bath was a cold rinse, usually just the face and hands. Bathrooms didn't really exist. You had chamber pots and wash basins in the bedrooms, but there were definitely no mirrors around the wash basin, and many people bathed while clothed because being naked was unseemly. And this is important to where we're going. Because in Europe, the popularity of bathhouses was called into question, and then it waned because many equated bathhouses with sexual escapades or with physical ailments. There's an account of someone visiting a spa bath for their health, and he mentions being inside of a bath with other people with open lesions or open wounds, and they're seeping out into the water, and he makes the connection, well, if these people are sick and I'm sick and we're sitting in this soup and their scabs are falling off, I'm probably going to get sick too. So that is one reason the baths weren't so popular. And the other is because you kind of had like a more puritanical view on nudity and modesty. Like they thought just going to the
Really?
they thought going to the bathhouse and seeing naked people would cause more promiscuity, if you will.
100 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I thought you were talking about
No,
back in the day.
100 years ago, 200 years ago, the bathhouses in Europe, they really, from like the 1700s to the 20th century, the popularity would like spike and then it would plummet because people were like, well, they're just fucking in the bathhouses.
Really? Even in like I could have sworn the Catholic faith had numerous bathhouses, almost like a Turkish bath.
Yeah, Vatican City did. But this is where it's weird because you would have a city and they would build a whole bunch of public bathhouses, and because they're public and they're paid for by the city, people are like, well, I don't use the bathhouses, it seems like a waste, so then they stop funding them, and for other reasons too. Like people hear these anecdotes of like, it's just a bunch of people fucking in the bathhouses, and they get crowded and all this stuff, so they stop funding them, but they don't all close. Some of them remain open. You have like, a few staples that stay open, and then for some reason or another, the popularity spikes again and they start building more, and then they come up with the whole new panic again and they shut them down. I mean, the bathhouse never goes away in Europe. It just loses popularity for random reasons over and over and over again. It's something that catches on and then falls off.
Was this also a place where there were indoor plumbing or whatever was considered indoor plumbing at the time?
That's a really good question.
Was it like a 1 to 2 thing, or was it two separate entities?
So it really it depends on where you are, because if you're near a water source, you can divert water, you can have a pump or something that takes the water, and that can supply. A relatively large city with some sort of infrastructure can provide water to places. Now, if it's an independent place, not near a water source, you'd have to load water somehow, catch water. It would be basically self-contained. You could have a well, something like that. The biggest problem with the bathhouses would be hot water, because you don't have several hundred years ago, you don't necessarily have furnaces. You would actually have like rooms where the stored water would be heated, usually by fire or coal or whatever, and then it would be piped through, or in some cases you would have like a pool or a spa or whatever, and it would be heated from like an air chamber around it. They were built kind of like one of those thermoses with the air inside it, and they would heat up the air around it, and that would heat it up. So the big thing there was how do you get the water warm, and then also how do you change out the water? So all of this is pretty tricky to figure out. So in places where you can easily load or easily flow water into and out of, typically near a water source, it's a lot easier to do that. But so, for example, like the Tremont Hotel, I think it had its own water source. Like it had a water tower or some a water catchment system totally to itself. It didn't have nowhere
You
around it
said
had plumbing.
You said this was in Chicago?
Tremont Hotel in Boston.
Oh, Boston. Excuse me. Okay.
But I didn't really look into how their infrastructure worked, so I couldn't say for 100%. It wouldn't make sense that they would pipe water for one building from a river however many miles away.
We're only on page 3.
Nice. Okay. Okay, so in Europe, the popularity of bathhouses was called into question, with many equating them with, sexual escapades or physical ailments. The European spa in the 19th century was more for the infirm, but not so in America. Americans bathed and Europeans didn't, a stereotype that persists today. And the bathroom is where our fixation on body image starts. So Ashe, I actually wrote this so that we could talk about this, because I find advertising and media are big from right here on, from the early 20th century to today. This, I think, is the kind of the key to this whole fucked up body image, body dysmorphia issue. 3 major ad campaigns changed the way we look at our bodies. They are the first examples of exploiting self-consciousness and the need to feel attractive in modern advertising. 1911, Woodbury Soap. This is the first advertising campaign to equate body image and sex. It was Woodbury Soap's Skin You Love to Touch, penned by Helen Lansdowne Rezer in 1911. Now, Lansdowne was interesting in that she was very much a feminist in her time, and this gets to be ironic here in a minute. She and her siblings were raised to be self-reliant by their mother, a librarian. She was an insurance agent and real estate agent, and she raised Lansdowne and her siblings to be more self-reliant, to provide for themselves. Lansdowne is an important figure in American advertising. She invented the national ad campaign and invented the celebrity testimonial. Lansdowne is pivotal to the role self-image plays in advertising, to a detrimental degree, because self-image will become problematic with women and young girls later in the 20th century. When Woodbury Soap left their previous advertising agency, the soap had been marketed as a pore-clearing, blemish-reducing cleanser. Lansdowne changed advertising completely when she stopped trying to sell soap based on its practical applications and instead focused on the previously unmentioned side effects, inducing desire in a lover. In other words, skin you love to touch, use this soap, your lover will want to caress your beautiful skin. It doesn't matter if it's clean, it just has to look nice. So Lansdowne Rezer, feminist. She was deeply involved in the New York suffrage movement. Following President Wilson's ratification of the 19th Amendment, she and her female employees marched in the subsequent celebration parade. During the Great Depression, as president of the Travelers Aid Society, she helped provide shelter to homeless women and their families. And during World War II, Lansdowne Rezer and her creative team were responsible for the development and execution of a campaign titled "Women Must Work to Win the War," which resulted in 3 million women entering the workforce by 1943. So that's arguably, you could say that she did a great thing in her time for feminism, and you could also argue that she did a horrible thing for her time for feminism and other people.
So I live in Baltimore, and Baltimore's they try to be as liberal as possible, and even then you get thrown into some crazy socialist and communist companies in the area. There's this one communist coffee shop called Red Emma's, and you're like, wow, a communist coffee shop. This is interesting, but you're focusing on capitalism. But in my mind, their whole mantra is, well, the revolution has to be paid for somehow. So that's probably what she was thinking. I'm going to make all this money to do all this social change, and she did it in a successful way.
Yeah, and I think she also was able to use her sort of gift as an advertising, let's see, what would you call groundbreaker, if you will, to the advantage of women at the time. I mean, take someone who's good at marketing and advertising, give them a good movement like suffrage, or providing aid to homeless women, and that is arguably they're going to be successful at it. I don't really think it's right to say that she's responsible for the negative impact of advertising on women, mostly because she's doing what she's good at, and she figures out a way to sell a product to women. She understands women. It isn't inherently, I don't think, evil or bad or manipulative. I think she just recognizes women in this time period want to be with a man. They want a man to
pursue them and to like them. And so, hey, soap makes men want to touch you. All right, in 1917, another major change came in advertising when Claude Hopkins realized that repeat business or continued sales of products was based on habit, and that habits could be invented by suggestion. Hopkins' groundbreaking advertising for Pepsodent toothpaste implored readers to, quote, just run your tongue across your teeth. You'll feel a film. That's what makes your teeth look off color and invites decay, end quote.
I brushed my teeth after this, by the way.
Because you did it. You touched your...
Of course I did. Of
Yeah.
course I did. Advertisement works.
It, to this day, 1970, over 100 years later, it says touch your teeth, feel your teeth.
Yep.
Yep, that's gross. Gotta... Yeah. Another of Hopkins' ads read, quote, note how many pretty teeth are seen everywhere. Millions are using a new method of teeth cleansing. Why would any woman have dingy film on her teeth? Pepsodent removes the film, end quote. Hopkins got fucking rich off the Pepsodent campaign, as did Pepsodent. And Hopkins attributed his success, over $1 million in 1917, to a two-pronged strategy. First, find a simple and obvious cue. In his case, having readers feel their teeth. We do it today. It works. And second, clearly define the rewards. For regular toothbrushing, the reward, so Hopkins thought, was the promise of fresh breath and clean, healthy teeth. But what he didn't realize is that the reason that this actually worked was because Pepsodent was manufactured with citric acid and mint oil, causing irritation and tingling in the gums, associating the feeling of brushing the teeth, the minty tingle, with the promise of healthy teeth. If customers didn't use Pepsodent specifically, their mouths didn't feel clean because they weren't tingling. Hopkins and Pepsodent...
Means it's working.
Say that again?
The burn means it's working.
That's right.
Yes.
Hopkins and Pepsodent created the habitual user. And I think my favorite product is this deodorant, Odorono. And I'm going to tell you the story of one of the first popular antiperspirant since you don't wear it. And I'm going to tell it to you in the most dramatic way I can.
I'm ready.
Here we go. In 1912, copywriter James Young got a job at J. Walter Thompson Company thanks to some help from his childhood friend, Helen Lansdowne, the same lady that, Woodbury soap lady, who happened to be dating Stanley Rezer, the vice president and general manager of the J. Walter Thompson Company. One of the first clients Young was paired with was Edna Murphy, who was trying to sell her new antiperspirant, Odorono. Odorono started off rocky. Men liked to smell musky, and women didn't talk about body odor. So the product was not popular, and pharmacies regularly shipped back cases of unsold product to Murphy. But the product saw success during the particularly hot 1912 Atlantic City Expo. Expo goers were hot and sweaty, and Odorono, after just one application, stopped sweat for up to 3 days. The original formula contained aluminum chloride suspended in acid solution, making it bright red. It was irritating to sensitive skin. The irritation means it's working. It was irritating to sensitive skin and would eat through cotton and silk fabrics, but the success at the expo sent Murphy looking for a new advertising agency. At first, Young's strategy at J. Walter Thompson revolved around medicinal uses for antiperspirant. Murphy's antiperspirant was okay, we'll back that up. Odorono was actually invented by her father, a surgeon, who used the product on his hands to prevent sweating during surgery. It was actually like a paste. It came in like a little round thing, and you would actually scoop it out with your hand.
Like blue paste?
Well, you'd like dip your hand in it, and then you would like smear it on your armpit. So he would take it out and he would rub it on his hands. That's how that worked. So he used it on his hands to prevent sweating during surgery. So the ad focused on excessive sweating as a medical ailment in need of a remedy. And this worked for several years. Sales picked up, and Odorono became a recognized brand. But sales began to slouch. People weren't really convinced that they needed deodorant. After all, Americans bathed regularly, and they wore a lot of perfume. They also tended to wear thick cotton pads under their arms to absorb sweat throughout the day. Fun fact.
Didn't know.
Well, fun fact. I actually found some of these pads in my grandparents' house after they died.
Wow.
Yeah, they were like pinned in the shirts.
Wow.
Neato.
Did that? Never mind. Keep going.
Yeah. In 1919, searching for bigger and better sales, Young took an extreme approach. Instead of beating around the bush, Young's new campaign told women that if they smelled bad, no man would have them, and women and men would gossip about them behind their back. His advertisement in a 1919 edition of the Ladies' Home Journal, quote, "Within the curve of a woman's arm, a frank discussion of a subject too often avoided. A woman's arm! Poets have sung of it. Great artists have painted its beauty. It should be the daintiest, sweetest thing in the world. And yet, unfortunately, it isn't always." Odor Ono is probably my favorite company from the early 1900s for their advertisements because they're absolutely horrible to people. Other Odor Ono ads were even more blunt, with headlines such as, "Beautiful but dumb. She has never learned the first rule of a lasting charm, a long-lasting deodorant." And, quote, "If you long for romance, don't let your dress offend with armhole odor." End quote. Armhole.
Nice.
I'm telling you. Anyway, all of these ad campaigns were major successes, and at their core, they gave vital information to ad agencies. Consumers responded to desire, the desire to be touched in the case of Woodbury soap, and the expectation that a person be pleasant to touch. Consumer habits were enforceable through suggestion. In the case of Pepsodent, literally imploring readers to feel their teeth right now. And consumers responded to fear, for Odor Ono, the fear of being an outcast, the subject of gossip, of being single and unloved, without prospects. I don't need to make the case that modern advertising is just a roided-up version of these earlier ad campaigns. Cigarette companies employed the same strategy to popularize habitual use of cigarettes. And if you are alive, you interact with about 500 advertisements a day on average. Logos, billboards, posters, algorithm-targeted content for bullshit like V-Shred and beef organ supplements. Do you know the Liver King guy?
No.
He's horrible. He was on a bunch of steroids, like $15,000 a month worth of steroids, and then he switched to like beef organ supplements.
Yes, he died recently.
I don't know if he died. Did he? I hope he did.
There was someone that was very like the supplemental king, but he was also on a bunch of steroids and died recently.
Ooh, did liver? I don't know. I'm not going to Google it right now. I think we're only 4 pages into this.
Yeah.
All right. So,
I'm good. You're good?
I could do this for hours, so yes.
I know you can. So can I.
All right. I don't need to discuss the entire history of modern advertising, but it is important to understand where and how it all started because nothing has changed in the foundational formula of advertising, specifically when it comes to body image, desire, habit, and fear. A 1996 poll by international ad agency Saatchi & Saatchi found that ads made women fear being unattractive or old. A study of Stanford undergraduate and graduate students found that 68% of women felt worse about their appearance after looking through women's magazines. Other frightening figures: 75% of women on average of average weight believe they are overweight, and 90% of women overestimate their own body size. 80% of 10-year-old girls have tried dieting, and at any given point in the United States, 50% of women are on some sort of diet. Now, this is interesting for 2 reasons. One, those numbers are like terrifying. It must like that. For 2 is this is specifically for women. This is the effect of advertising on women, and that is interesting because I think we're only assuming that women are affected or impacted by advertising. And I'm not sure why that is, other than perhaps it is just the most obvious and apparent. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Because we're not talking about women.
Think of it this way. In 1996, what was being advertised to men besides cigarettes and beer?
I was 11, so super soakers.
I know, but still, think about it, though. Like, we watched the Super Bowl. What was being advertised during those commercials? Beer and cigarettes and cars. I mean, everything else was for women was wear this, wear this, look beautiful, do this. I mean, hell, the Victoria's Secret catalog and the Sears catalog was all about women just looking amazing. There was not much in there for men.
A 1999 study published in the medical journal Pediatrics found that out of over 500 school-aged girls, 69% reported that magazine pictures influenced their idea of the perfect body shape, and 47% reported wanting to lose weight because of magazine pictures. Further, there was a positive association between the frequency of reading women's magazines and girls acting on feelings of not being the right size or shape, including the initiation of exercise and diet. So this isn't paranoia. Magazines and targeted advertising, they are not scapegoats for some other deeper problem. They are the deeper problem. And there are a lot of studies to back up that claim. A 2019 study published in the journal Tropical Medicine and International Health, conducted on nearly 700 girls and women in rural Burkina Faso, aged 12 to 20, found that the more exposure young women had to media in general, just all media, television, radio, internet, and magazine, resulted in increased body dissatisfaction that may lead to eating disorders. And this is interesting because there is another report that's often cited. This was actually earlier than the Burkina Faso. It came out in 2002. And the central thesis of this study was that when the island of Fiji was introduced to television in 1995, this study found that Fijian girls' attitudes about their weight changed since the introduction of television, suggesting that exposure to television in general led to eating disorders or negative body image. This is a claim that like online cranks have like tried to disprove over and over. There's like problems with the sample size is pretty small. But Becker's research did pave the way for more research into the subject, and cranks be damned, it turns out the hypothesis is supported by other research. The Fijian survey may have been limited or it may have been compromised, but exposure to mass media can be and has been linked to negative self-image. That should be self-evident. Now, that's all well and good for girls and women. And you know what? Other studies and surveys have found that media targeting women and girls focus more on weight and appearance than media consumed by men. So we can see conscious ad campaigns featuring many different female bodies. This is a new embrace of what women actually look like. We can view that as a real problem that has faced a reckoning in popular culture and advertising. No longer are plus-size women the comic relief in movies and television. They are now showrunners, and this is a positive trend. It's an uphill battle, but it's trending in a good way. I think, in general, modern society has done a good job of embracing female bodies of all shapes and sizes.
As an adult male, do you recognize this on a daily basis?
Going to Target, yes.
With like the advertisements they have on the walls and stuff, or in like the Cosmo magazines there, and like the impulse aisle.
Target is really the most obvious one because they have. One, I prefer going to Target over Walmart. I mean, I love Walmart's prices, but I like Target better. Yeah. And Target has mannequins that are like real size, of real proportions, real of women. All their new advertising has the models are normal looking people. I've noticed some of them have vitiligo, which is interesting. Like all the models are beautiful in their own way. And I say that genuinely as like a straight dude. Like when I look at them, they're all objectively beautiful women.
Not to get quasi off topic, but I can picture what you're saying now with the mannequins. Like I see that when I do go to Target. I haven't been at Walmart in years, but I asked a friend of mine who is in an international interracial couple. He's black and his wife, she is white from Slovakia. And the few advertisements I get on a daily basis now truly come from Paramount Plus or Hulu, whatever. And they're selling me detergent, clothes from Target, pharmaceuticals, whatever. But I see more interracial couples being displayed now more than different body types. And I asked him, as someone in an interracial relationship, I'm like, do you see these? Because I see them as a gay man, because every now and then they'll throw in the gay couple. Just for 5 seconds, they're there with their daughter or their son, eating cereal, talking about Tide or something stupid like that. And I'm noticing that more now rather than the physical body types. And he said he agrees with me, but he said in certain circumstances, it feels forced. And that's just bad actors. But that's just me just throwing my 2 cents, getting off topic on that. But I don't see the different body types digitally on real commercials rather than mannequins or on like print media.
I don't so much either. And the only inclination or the only evidence that I have for it being elsewhere is seeing the reaction of people online or like talking heads about how they're fat shaming, like saying that overweight people shouldn't be embracing their body because it's unhealthy. And there's been some particularly conservatives really don't like Lizzo. She is a large black lady, And
Yes.
I think they don't like her skin color, and I don't think that they like that she embraces the fact that she is overweight. So you see a lot of really vile, Turning Point USA and like the Daily Wire are by far the biggest perpetrators of this kind of like body and race shaming. You see it most. It's like the far right reactionary culture of like against woke culture or whatever. And so everything that's not straight white people is woke, and it's bad for humanity. I don't get it.
No, I don't. I try not to pay attention.
I'm forced to, because you know what? It's going to be my life's mission, I think, to just to dissect the personalities of everybody involved with the Daily Wire and Turning Points USA, and just demonstrate exactly how shitty of human beings they all are. I hate them all. So Ashe, all this talking about the women folk, I ask you, what about men?
What about men? That's a broad term. And are we even to social media yet? Has the internet come into this timeline?
We're actually about to get into G.I. Joes.
G.I. Joes? I didn't get into G.I. Joes. Did you get into G.I. Joes?
Oh yeah, I had a shitload of them. What did you play with when you were a kid?
Well, we had Legos and Tinker Toys. Honestly, I liked more video games than anything else. I really don't think I had like little action figures. If I did, actually, you know what? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Those were my action figures. But the turtles were buff.
Very
They
buff.
were buff. They were cut.
You know, I think so. They were buff. They had good arms and legs. But I think the creators took some liberties, like with the abs and stuff, because those were just the shells.
Yes, they were the shells. Yes,
there's
exactly.
no muscles there. They weren't doing 1,000 sit-ups a day.
We did have some toys that were from, at the time, the WWF, the World Wrestling Federation. So Hulk Hogan and Sting and Macho Man Randy Savage and what was the other guy? The Warrior? Was it the Warrior?
Ooh.
He would always grab the ring and go like this. I think it was the Warrior. Anyways, go on. Yes.
I'm so glad you mentioned Sting, because I forgot about Sting.
Oh, Sting was awesome. He survived many iterations of his character. I think he's been in wrestling. He may still be wrestling, and that's been, what, 40 years?
Yeah, if he's still around, that's impressive.
He's doing his best to keep his hairline where it is. Notice how mine's going.
No, Sting, he's the one. He has the white face and the.
Yes, kind of like the Crow. Yeah,
that's exactly how people would know him. I think the stereotypical argument for male body standards, and this goes into the G.I. Joes. I grew up with hand-me-down G.I. Joes and He-Man action figures. He-Man, he's ripped. Unattainable body type. And I think this is like just a stereotypical, like, what about men, like, kind of argument, like, men also have unachievable body standards that, we can't get. We were exposed to this stuff. I never felt inadequate, like, playing with these toys. Like they're toys. They're
toys,
and they're, to me, like they weren't cartoon interpretations of what a human or man is supposed to look like. To me, they were like, the reason they look like that is because they're cartoons, because they're fake, because you can't look like that.
The Lego Man was very blocky. The Mario Brothers were short, fat Italian plumbers. Sonic the Hedgehog
was a fucking hedgehog.
Was a very, very fast rodent. I mean, these were the things that I played with on Nintendo Super. The Legend of Zelda. Link was just a guy. He wasn't ripped. He was just there. These are things that I encountered growing up, and they didn't really influence me on a body type image. It was more just like, do the right thing. But that's another conversation.
Right. This particular camp of like men's rights activists would say that women aren't the only ones facing unrealistic body image. Boys grew up with Stretch Armstrong and WWF wrestlers who were on a shitload of steroids, by the way. And we had action heroes like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. And it really seems like if you have any male character in a show, this is me speaking now. It seems like for me, if you have any male character in a show or movie and they're going to be shirtless, they better have like perfectly sculpted abs and torsos, like obliques and everything. Or the other alternative is they should be so obese that we can laugh at them. I think what sticks out in my head the most is because I watched Billy Madison the other day, and I go back to this, and this is a scene that like sticks out in my head a lot. It's when Billy Madison and Chris Farley's character, the bus driver, are doing they're studying in his tent, and they're doing the bus driver's doing like a striptease whenever Adam Sandler gets the right answer.
There it is.
Yeah.
All right.
So, half the movie, Adam Sandler's going around with his shirt off. He's not like perfectly sculpted, but Adam Sandler's like a young, 26 or something. He looks good without a shirt. Compare that to Chris Farley. As soon as he takes his shirt off, Chris Farley's a big guy. It's like, let's laugh at the big fat guy who's doing a striptease. Like, this is hilarious. Okay. So that's what we grew up with. All right. So those are, to be fair, I think those are perfectly valid claims. Little boys, of our age were playing with these toys where men were represented as like just being these hulky beefcake men. But straight men and gay men do not process media in the same way. This is something that is super weird that I read that there's research on that I really did not anticipate or foresee. But this is also no secret to the advertising industry. There has been research done. Corporations do not want to separate their straight and gay male customers. Gay men typically have more disposable income, but companies do not want to alienate straight customers by associating their products directly with homosexuality. And this is called the marketer's dilemma, where you want to sell and advertise to the LGBT community without losing business from straight consumers. The LGBT community has an estimated buying power of over $450 billion. That's the highest buying power of any minority community. Corporations want that money, and it's the job of advertisers to get it for them. Studies conducted by ad agencies found that all media consumers, gay and straight, respond positively to heterosexual relationships depicted in advertising when those ads include implicit gay imagery. Rainbows, freedom rings, which I hadn't heard of. I had to Google, and then I saw them, and I was like, oh.
What is a freedom ring? I don't understand what that is.
It's basically it's basically the rainbow, but in ring form, like a bunch of like red, orange, yellow, green, but it's like rings.
Okay.
Yeah, freedom ring. I'd never heard that, but when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, those things."
I thought you meant like a ring you put in your hand, and I was like, "That doesn't make any sense." But as a gay man, I mean, I noticed, like I said earlier, those 5 seconds where it's very clearly two men and their daughter or their pet. I mean, there's a commercial now. I think it's a Heinz 57 or Hunt's commercial. Is Hunt's the other ketchup commercial or ketchup entity, where this young guy opens up a fridge, looks in the fridge saying, wow, there's nothing here. Well, let me say that. He doesn't say anything, but the advertisement says, boyfriends are better, or boyfriends are easier to replace than ketchup. And it's like a shitty ketchup brand. And the door closes. It's all like 10 seconds. I'm like, wow, this ketchup company is advertising meat. I noticed stuff like that rather than a freedom ring.
Yeah, I think this study, or the advertising studies that they're talking about, I think this was more like in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. Because today I don't think we see that. Today we see more stuff that's more explicit than just implied. But the inclusion of implicit gay symbols works on an even deeper level. When a corporation hints at their alliance with the LGBT community, it can feel like an inside joke that straight people aren't privy to. But gay males are hyper aware of the implicit imagery. A small study conducted with an equal number of gay and straight male subjects found that gay men were more susceptible to media influence than straight men. That media had a higher influence on eating and body image and influenced their beliefs regarding the importance of physical attractiveness. Gay men scored higher on drive for thinness, body dissatisfaction, and body image-related anxiety than straight men, and had a higher rate of eating disorders than straight men. And this is not a new thing. This actually is a good anecdotal point. So I don't internalize anything that I see in advertising. Like, it doesn't matter. Maybe it's because everything just looks like me and I ignore it. I don't pick up on anything. Like, I don't pick up on any subtext of any advertising at all. But you're saying that you do.
I notice it in the sense of I'm watching the commercial and I see someone that not looks like me in the sense of a white gay male, but just a gay couple. No matter if they're a white gay couple, interracial couple, I just notice those little inflections. I mean, it goes along with the idea of gaydar. I just notice it. Whether the actors are or not gay, I don't know, but I see it real quick. And it's not that I use those 3 seconds of noticing that makes me want to buy this product, because to be frank, I'm not paying attention to the product because I'm at the age where I don't give a shit anymore. But I do notice that, the 21st century is here. They're trying to advertise to a broad spectrum of people. Now, someone younger may be influenced differently. And as you were saying, a lot of these commercials weren't around when we were younger in the 90s. They just weren't. But even then, when I was that young, I would notice little things like that. I wrote a note in here earlier. We'll talk about it later. But yeah, I don't notice the product, but I notice the fact that there is someone that is like me, whether they look like me or not. That is my community. I do notice that.
Let me ask you this: does it feel forced, like in the advertisement, or do you think there's like some like a gay person in this advertising company who's like, I'm gonna write this?
In June, Pride Month, it feels forced, because I don't. Pride Month Pride became a day, a week, a month. And again, I'm 38, but I feel like a lot of the companies out there are really forcing that in June. But I don't give a shit, But that's what I feel.
Yeah, I ignore Pride Month because that and like everything has a rainbow on it. Come on, guys, they're gay all year round.
I notice more subtle things. I mean, even growing up, where people will put HRC stickers, the blue background with the yellow equal sign on people's cars. I would notice little subtle things like that, and that's how I think I've become more aware of how advertising works, because it's all about the subtleties.
That does it for this episode on body dysmorphia disorder in the gay community. Next episode is going to take a look at the Beefcake magazines of the 1950s and 60s, the more natural street style of the 1970s, as well as the rise of the AIDS epidemic and gym culture of the 1980s. This has been Unfuck the Poor. You can find us at uftpultra.com. That's UFTP as in Unfuck the Poor, ultra.com.